Whenever you hear the name Benjamin Franklin, I bet the first thing you picture is that famous scene, right?
Oh, yeah. The man in the storm, kite in the air.
Exactly. Proving he's the one who, snatched thunder from heaven.
It's an amazing image, but honestly, it's a bit of a distraction from the real story. Today, we're not just celebrating his genius, we're going to dive deep into how his invention, the lightning rod, ignited this massive, uh, bitter, and totally politicized scientific war in 18th century Britain.
That's right. And for any of you who think science is, purely objective, this deep dive is definitely for you. Our mission today is to look at the sources that show how a simple piece of metal became a symbol of either colonial rebellion or royal allegiance.
It was a scientific fight over something that sounds almost trivial.
What was it?
Knobs versus points.
Wow. And the sources we have, they really paint a picture of this conflict.
They do. We've got Franklin's own letters from 1751 and 1755 where he lays out his theory. We have accounts from his peers in Europe, like Beccaria and Priestley.
And we also have the metadata from his Royal Society election and some crucial modern analysis that maps this whole fight directly onto the politics leading up to the American Revolution.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's start with the science, because without that foundation, the whole political argument just sounds like, well, chaos.
Huh.
Franklin's work was so revolutionary because he didn't just invent a device.
No, he changed how the entire world thought about electricity.
So what was the theory like before him?
It was messy, really complicated. People talked about two kinds of electricity, these dual fluid ideas. They had terms like vitreous and resinous electricity. Franklin just, swept all that away with his single fluid concept.
A single fluid. What did that mean in practice?
It was a huge shift. He basically proposed that electricity was this one universal fluid that's in all matter. So instead of two different types of electricity, a body either had too much of this fluid,
Which he called positive.
right, or it had a deficiency, a lack of it.
And that was negative. So he didn't just give us the lightning rod, he gave us the fundamental language, positive and negative, that we still use. I mean, that's a massive contribution that gets lost in the whole kite story.
It really is. And this new language, it let him describe the physics behind the lightning rod. And the core idea was something he called the power of points.
The power of points. Okay, and that's the heart of the whole knobs versus points debate, right? The difference between a sharp edge and a blunt one.
Precisely. Franklin noticed that sharp points have this amazing property. They can both draw on and throw off that electrical fluid at much greater distances than blunt, rounded bodies can.
So if you have a big charge building up in a thundercloud, it wants to go somewhere.
Right. And when it gets near a sharp point, the charge density at that very tip gets so intense that it sort of acts like a silent electrical drain.
Like it's bleeding off the charge before it can build up into a huge catastrophic strike.
That's the mechanism. And that led him straight to his 1750 proposal for the lightning rod, an upright, sharp iron rod connected down into the earth. But, and this is the part that gets lost in the political fight later on, Franklin said the rod served a dual purpose.
It was an either situation.
Yes, he always stated it in the alternative. The rod would either prevent the strike by silently drawing off the charge,
Or if prevention failed.
it would conduct the strike harmlessly into the ground, saving the building. That prevention idea is what his enemies really seized on.
Okay, but before the critics, let's talk about the famous kite experiment in 1752. It made him a superstar in Europe, but the sources show the popular image is just completely wrong.
Oh, totally wrong. He was far more careful than we imagined. The goal wasn't to prove lightning existed. I mean, everyone knew that. It was to show the sameness of the electric matter with that of lightning.
He wanted to prove the stuff in his lab was the same as the stuff in the sky.
Exactly.
And he wasn't standing out in a field soaking wet just asking for it.
No way. Absolutely not. He described using a silk kite, which was better for wet and windy weather, and he had the twine connected to a key. But crucially, he wrote that the person holding the ribbon must stand within a door or window or under some cover.
So he was indoors.
Yeah.
It was a controlled observation, not some daredevil stunt.
Right. He was collecting charge, not trying to get hit by a lethal bolt of lightning.
That caution, that's real science. And his success, I mean, it earned him huge renown. He was elected to the Royal Society and won the Copley Medal.
Which was basically the Nobel Prize of its day.
Yeah.
And that success really, it set the stage for the enormous fight to come, because now you have this American colonial upstart who has just revolutionized physics, and very quickly the theoretical argument moves into a very practical life or death problem for the British.
This is where things really get interesting. Let's shift to the real-world test case that kicked off this whole bitter debate, protecting the Board of Ordnance's giant gunpowder magazine at Purfleet in 1772.
And you can't overstate the stakes here. I mean, just a few years earlier, in 1769, there was the Brescia explosion. A lightning strike hit a gunpowder depot and destroyed 1/6 of the city.
Wow.
Yeah. So the Board of Ordnance, the agency in charge of military security, they were rightly terrified of that happening again.
So they go to the experts, the Royal Society, which forms a committee with Franklin on it. So what did they decide?
Based on the power of points, they strongly recommended pointed conductors for Purfleet. All their lab experiments showed that points drew off charge more quietly and from farther away. For them, the evidence was just irrefutable.
But not everyone was so sure that what happens with tiny sparks in a lab scales up to a giant thundercloud and a building full of explosives.
And that's where Benjamin Wilson comes in. He was Franklin's eventual critic and a former associate.
Wilson wasn't just some random guy, though.
No, not at all. He was a Copley medalist himself, and he was the official sergeant painter to the Board of Ordnance, so he had the ear of the government. He argued that Franklin's lab results didn't apply here and pushed for short, knobbed or blunt conductors instead.
But if the science seemed so clear, why did anyone even listen to him?
Because he cleverly used Franklin's own theory against him. Wilson's great fear was that the pointed rods wouldn't just prevent a strike. He thought they'd be so good at attracting charge that they would actually invite a strike down.
So his argument was that Franklin's design was too good, that it would turn maybe into a definite catastrophe.
Precisely. He thought a distant cloud would just pass by a blunt rod, but that a sharp point would actively pull the lightning down.
And he didn't keep this argument academic.
Oh no, he went public. Franklin complained from afar that Wilson was trying to alarm the city with the supposed danger of pointed rods. And then, well, fate handed Wilson a golden opportunity.
Don't tell me Purfleet got hit.
It did. In 1777, the magazine was damaged by lightning. Now, the sources suggest it was minor damage, probably from a disconnected clamp, but Wilson didn't care.
Of course not.
He immediately seized on it as total and complete vindication for his blunt knobs.
So now you have this huge public fight, the Franklinists with their points versus Wilson and his knobs, and this is all happening just as the American Revolution is kicking off.
And that's where a science debate becomes explosive. It instantly became a proxy battle for political loyalty.
If you backed points, you were with Franklin, the American rebel.
And if you supported knobs, you were siding with King George III and the Crown. It wasn't about physics anymore. It was about patriotism.
About who controlled knowledge.
And Wilson, he sensed this political shift. He knew he couldn't win on scientific merit against the Royal Society, so he appealed directly to the top.
To the king himself.
Yeah.
Which brings us to the sheer theater of the Pantheon demonstration in 1777. Tell us about this spectacle.
It was pure showmanship. Wilson stages this massive, expensive demonstration at the Pantheon, which was London's fanciest assembly hall. He builds a mock cloud, 155 feet long, made of tinfoil drums hanging from the ceiling, all powered up by a huge electrical machine.
He literally brought the lightning indoors.
Yes. And he'd moved this cloud over a little model of the Purfleet magazine, and he showed how the point invited a big spark, while the knob let the cloud pass by harmlessly.
And the audience for this.
The highest possible. The king, the queen, the Prince of Wales, they all came to watch.
And the king bought it completely, even though the scientific community was skeptical that this actually modeled a real thunderstorm.
He was totally convinced. King George III reportedly said that any apple woman could understand the experiment. He just dismissed all the peer-reviewed science.
And what did he do?
He immediately ordered all the pointed conductors on royal palaces and government buildings to be ripped down and replaced with, as the Franklinists called them, obtuse Wilson's obtuse rods.
That's incredible. And this royal meddling, it led to one of the most famous resignations in the history of science.
It created a crisis. So John Pringle, who is the president of the Royal Society and the king's personal doctor, he was put in an impossible position. He resigned in protest. He chose science over loyalty.
And what did he tell the king?
This story is just so powerful. Pringle supposedly told the monarch that the king could change the laws of the land, but he could not change the laws of nature.
Wow. That is the Enlightenment in a single sentence. A rejection of authority in favor of fact.
It really is.
And where was Franklin during all this?
Oh, he was in France working on treaties, being celebrated as a philosopher king. And he reported on the whole knob controversy with his typical wit and political poison.
What did he say?
He said he wasn't displeased, that the king changing conductors was a matter of small importance to him.
And then came the punchline.
Then came the dagger, he added. It is only since he thought himself and family safe from the thunder of heaven that he dared to use his own thunder in destroying his innocent subjects.
Oof. He turned a petty science debate into a massive political point about the crown's tyranny.
That ability to just weave science and statesmanship together, that was his genius. When he got to France, they immediately saw him as the perfect symbol of this New World philosopher.
This dual identity, the guy who conquered nature and challenged kings.
It was perfectly captured in that famous epigram from his friend, the French statesman Turgot.
What was the line?
In Latin, it was "Erpuit coela fulmen, mox septrum tyrannus."
He snatched thunder from heaven, then the scepter from tyrant.
Exactly. It was this brilliant line that elevated him from just an inventor to a revolutionary icon who defeated both natural power and arbitrary government.
The whole thing really highlights this central idea of the era, doesn't it? That scientific truth was seen as a precondition for political freedom.
Absolutely. The philosopher Condorcet made exactly that point in Franklin's obituary. He said that tricks like the Pantheon show could only fool the ignorant, and that, and this is a quote, "an ignorant people is always enslaved."
So for them, Franklin's clear, empirical science was the groundwork for freedom. The ability to tell fact from royal command was itself an act of rebellion.
It's amazing how one person could be so central to so many different world-changing ideas. And his curiosity, of course, it wasn't just about lightning.
Oh, not at all.
I mean, he was a true polymath. He mapped the Gulf Stream. He did experiments on stilling waves with oil, an idea he got from Pliny the Elder from 2,000 years earlier.
And he invented bifocals.
Right. He joked he needed them so he could see both the food on his plate and the faces of the people he was dining with.
What a character.
Yep.
This whole deep dive, it's just amazing how a simple piece of metal made for public safety became so politically charged. It was a literal fight over adopting American innovation versus sticking to a royal decree.
Which leaves us with a really interesting question for you, the listener, to think about, especially as we look at modern science debates. Franklin made his inventions, the lightning rod, the Franklin stove, for public use. He never sought any patents.
He felt knowledge should be a public good, free for everyone.
So consider this. Did that commitment to open knowledge actually intensify the political reaction? By refusing to profit, he made the lightning rod a purely ideological object. Did that make his science a more dangerous threat to the powers that be, who preferred to control the truth? Think about the power of an idea that you can't buy or sell.
It's a perfect provocative thought to end on. Thank you for guiding us through the fiery world of points versus knobs. We'll see you next time on The Deep Dive.